The Monday morning rush was just beginning at the fourth worst coffee shop in Dallas when every screen in the place flickered, then switched to the same message. Phones, tablets, the digital menu board, even someone's smartwatch, all displayed the same urgent alert in shimmering alien script before translating into English. Attention sentient beings of Terra 3, this is an emergency broadcast from the Interstellar Alliance. The barista froze mid-pump, her hand suspended over a cup labeled Ken. Spell Ken because why not? The entire shop fell silent, except for a Bluetooth-wearing businessman in the corner who kept muttering about quarterly revenue targets. The message continued, now accompanied by a flickering hologram. The alien addressing us looked like the improbable offspring of a peacock and a centipede, with shimmering feathers and segmented arms folded in a precise bureaucratic posture. Its attire resembled something from a sci-fi boardroom, a tailored jumpsuit with glowing trim that screamed middle management. We regret to inform you that your sector has been exposed to a Class II interstellar pandemic. As the nearest civilization with compatible medical infrastructure, we are requisitioning your assistance. Please direct us to your top virologist immediately. Against every instinct for self-preservation, I raise my hand. Dr. Isaac Keller, virology specialist. I blurted, instantly regretting it. The alien's compound eyes rotated toward me with unsettling precision. Acknowledge. Initiating emergency transport. Before I could protest, a brilliant blue light enveloped me. The last thing I heard was a barista calling out, I got a Venti caramel macchiato, wait, where'd he go? I stumbled into what could only be described as the lobby of an interstellar consulate, gleaming metal arches, floating data terminals, and beings of every conceivable shape and texture moving with controlled urgency. Clutching my still unclaimed coffee loyalty card, I barely had time to process before a tall, bioluminescent alien, resembling a glowing hair, approached with fluid grace. Dr. Keller, it intoned with a polite nod. I am Ambassador Threx of the Interstellar Alliance. Thank you for responding with such exceptional speed. Its antenna twitched in something resembling mild suspicion. Most civilizations require extensive bureaucratic deliberation before offering aid. Yeah, about that. Before I could explain the whole accidental volunteer thing, another alien rushed up, a frantic salamander like being wearing something that might have been a medical lab coat, except it shimmered like liquid chrome. Is this a human expert? Excellent. I'm Dr. Via, head of CD medicine. Multiple limbs holding data tablets jittered with excitement. Is it true your species still ingests liquid stimulants to maintain productivity? Barbaric, yet fascinating. I blinked. You mean coffee? Precisely. Such biochemical recklessness. We have much to discuss, but there is no time. The plague is decimating 12 star systems. We need your expertise now. As they hustled me toward what looked like a futuristic command center, I sighed. This was shaping up to be one of those days. The alien med lab was like a mad scientist's dream. Crystalline containment units, floating surgical drones, and monitors streaming more data than I could process. Ambassador Threx and Dr. Via ushered me toward a central display where a horrifying 3D model of an alien virus pulsed with malevolent energy. The pathogen targets quantum cellular matrices used by all known intelligent species. Dr. Via explained breathlessly. But your species, you appear to be immune. Let me guess, I said, already feeling the creeping absurdity. Because we don't have this quantum cellular whatever? Correct. Via's scales shimmer with scientific zeal. Your biology is primitive, utterly resistant to the virus because it can't interface with such a rudimentary system. I snorted despite myself. So we're immune because we're too biologically backward to get infected? Threx interjected, feathers ruffling in disapproval. Perhaps we could focus on developing a cure rather than celebrating functional simplicity. I nodded, still processing. All right, but first, any chance I could get some coffee? I was kind of in the middle of my morning ritual before all this. The horrified looks that crossed both their faces should have been a warning. The next several hours were a blur of frantic research. I ran through Earth's greatest hits of disease prevention: soap, alcohol sanitizers, vaccines. To my growing disbelief, it seemed the galaxy's brightest minds had somehow skipped several millennia of medical basics. So you got faster than light travel, but never thought of washing your hands? I asked. Threx stiffened, antenna twitching defensively. We assumed quantum sterilization protocols were sufficient. I face-bombed. No wonder you're in trouble. As we pored over scans of human biochemistry, something clicked. Wait a second, I muttered, studying Earth's hilariously resilient immune system under their advanced tech. What if it's not just immunity? What if our immune system works because of all the terrible stuff we put into our bodies? Via's scales rippled with excitement. You mean your species' history of consuming toxins, chemicals, and stimulants has conferred long-term resistance? Exactly, I said, pointing at the holographic model. Our biology isn't efficient. It's adaptable. We've survived because we're like cosmic cockroaches. Before they could process this revelation, my stomach growled loud enough to make several techs jump. Seriously, I sighed. Is there any need around here? Ambassador Threx made a resigned sound, somewhere between a sigh and a strangled chirp. I will arrange something. And that's how I accidentally became humanity's first interstellar medical consultant, armed with nothing but a half-empty stomach and centuries of questionable dietary habits. The sterile hum of alien machinery filled the sprawling medical research complex aboard the Interstellar Alliance's flagship station. Sleek, shimmering walls pulsed faintly with a bluish bioluminescence, as if the entire facility were alive and monitoring its occupants. I stood at the center of the main laboratory, surrounded by monitors projecting incomprehensible streams of alien biodata. Most of it made about as much sense to me as a tax code written by drunk lawyers. Ambassador Threx hovered nearby, their elegant feathers twitching in a way I was beginning to recognize as barely contained frustration. Dr. Via, however, was in their element, darting between displays, their many arms manipulating complex alien medical devices with frenzied precision. We've isolated the viral core, Via announced, projecting a rotating 3D image of the pathogen into the air. The virus pulsed like a dark star, its fractal-like structure bristling with jagged, almost malevolent intent. Its adaptive matrix evolves with each infection, rewriting the host's molecular structure to sustain itself. No known species has resisted this, except yours. That's because we're built like old cars held together with duct tape, I muttered, folding my arms. Our bodies break down constantly, but we patch ourselves up and keep going. Via nodded eagerly. Precisely. Your species' biology is astonishingly inefficient, yet its adaptive capacity is unparalleled. It's as though you evolved through chaotic trial and error, surviving through sheer stubbornness. Flattering, I deadpanned. Threx cleared their throat, or the alien equivalent, a soft clicking sound. Dr. Keller, if you have a viable strategy, the Council demands results. Entire systems are falling as we speak. I bit my lip, staring at the holographic virus. You've got advanced biotech, but you're thinking too clean. The virus can't adapt to human biology because we spent our entire evolutionary history adapting to viruses. If we can replicate that unpredictability, introduce something chaotic enough to destabilize its adaptive core, we might stand a chance. Via's eyes lit up. A synthetic analog to your immune system's chaotic resilience, a biological wild card. Threx's feathers rippled in mild alarm. This sounds unconventional. I shrugged. Welcome to human medicine. Via clapped their many hands together, practically vibrating with scientific zeal. Begin cellular synthesis protocols. We'll map human immune responses, and... Their exclamation was interrupted by a loud metallic clang from across the lab. One of the containment units shuddered violently, its energy field flickering for an instant. A hulking reptilian alien in a battle-scarred uniform burst into the room, looking furious. Ambassador Threx! The warrior snarled, pointing a serrated claw at the glowing diplomat. You promised results. My people are dying while you conduct experiments. Threx extended their arms in a calming gesture. General Tarak, please. We are progressing as rapidly as possible. Not fast enough. Tarak's deep-set eyes burned with desperation. Half my fleet is down. My homeworld is falling. You bureaucrats delay while we die. I stepped forward, keeping my voice steady. We're doing everything we can. Believe me, I know what it's like to be helpless against something you can't fight. I held his gaze, not flinching. But if you want a cure, you'll have to trust us. Tarak loomed over me, claws flexing, before finally letting out a guttural snarl of reluctant acceptance. Do not fail us, human. As he stormed out, I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Diplomatic negotiations aboard the station have intensified, Threx admitted, smoothing their ruffled feathers. I shot them a look. I noticed. Via was already back at the nearest console. We must proceed. If we can destabilize a virus's structural matrix using synthesized human biochemical compounds. An alert blared and several containment units lit up like emergency flares. Via's scales paled. Containment breach detected, Laboratory Bay 9. Before anyone could react, a side door hissed open, and a cluster of shambling, twisted figures staggered into the lab. Their forms were grotesquely distorted, fused with metallic-like growths that pulsed with the same ominous glow as the holographic virus. Is that? I whispered, horrified. Threx drew a gleaming energy blade from beneath their flowing robes. Feathers fully flared in defensive alarm. Infected host forms. The virus is evolving. The infected creatures let out a bone-chilling, warbling screech and charged. A trio of station guards in sleek segmented armor stormed into the lab, firing bursts of white-hot plasma that barely slowed the advancing horrors. Fall back, Threx ordered, shoving me behind an equipment terminal as the fight intensified. Via desperately secured the main lab's data drives, their many arms moving with terrifying speed. I scrambled to the nearest terminal, fingers flying across an alien keyboard that barely made sense. I need to shut down the secondary containment grid before. The lab's power surged, sending sparks raining from the overhead systems. The infected creatures tore through the guard defenses with horrifying efficiency. Dr. Keller, Threx shouted, seal the blast doors. I slapped a glowing red symbol on the console, activating a barrier field just as the last surviving guard fell. The laboratory shuddered as heavy containment doors slammed shut, sealing us inside with flickering emergency lights. Panting, I surveyed the ruined lab, heart pounding. Via shakily emerged from behind a shattered medical terminal, clutching a data drive like it was their lifeline. We have the viral core data, they gasped. But the containment breach. We're alive. I cut in, still catching my breath. That's what matters. Threx lowered their blade, feathers twitching as they processed what had just happened. We cannot allow another breach. If even one of those creatures reaches the station's core, they won't, I promised grimly, fists clenched. We stop this virus, or we all go down fighting. Via's eyes glimmered with desperate determination. Then we synthesize a cure or die trying. No one argued. There was nothing left to say. The laboratory echoed with steady hum of emergency power as we regrouped in the secured operations bay. The containment breach had left us rattled, but there was no time to reflect. Every second counted. On the central display, a holographic map of the infected star systems pulsed in ominous red, showing worlds already consumed by the viral plague. The infection spread like wildfire, chaotic, relentless, and adaptive. Just like us, I thought grimly. Ambassador Threx paced near the central console, their feathers bristling with barely suppressed tension. Dr. Via was already buried in a sea of diagnostic screens, their multi-jointed arms moving with tireless precision as they processed streams of complex biological data. We can't win this with containment protocols, I said, stepping forward. That virus is evolving faster than anything we've seen on Earth, and your systems aren't built to handle that kind of chaos. Threx fixed me with a piercing gaze. What do you propose, Dr. Keller? We've exhausted every conventional medical approach. That's the problem, I said. You're fighting with precision. We need unpredictability. I pointed to the viral structure on the display. It mutates because it's designed to respond to perfect biological systems. Human biology isn't perfect. It's a biochemical train wreck held together with caffeine, preservatives, and stubborn determination. Via's scales shimmered with intrigued calculation. You believe introducing chaotic biological elements could destabilize the virus? Not just believe. I said firmly, the virus can't adapt to what it can't predict. Threx's feathers flared with concern. You're suggesting introducing Earth's unrefined biochemistry? Exactly, I said. Earth's immune systems aren't efficient, they're resilient. Our bodies survive because they expect to be attacked constantly. We're biologically designed to improvise under pressure. Via practically vibrated with excitement. We could synthesize a resilience factor, a composite of adaptive human traits. Your species' extreme tolerance to toxins, stimulants, even pathogens. If we replicated that, we might give the galaxy a fighting chance. I finished their thought. And we'll need samples of some of Earth's worst culinary disasters. Threx blinked. Explain. I pulled up a list on the nearest console. Preservatives, artificial flavoring compounds, synthetic stimulants, you name it. Processed junk food from Earth is basically a cocktail of chemicals that shouldn't work together, but somehow do. Via's eyes gleamed. A biological paradox, resilience through excess. Fascinating. Before Threx could object, a new alert flashed across the display. An incoming emergency transmission from the war-torn world of Crixa 7. The screen flickered to life, revealing a battered alien officer surrounded by wounded civilians. Behind them, the sky was a burning mosaic of crashing ships and twisted organic tendrils that writhed like living storms. This is General Tarak of the Crixan Defense Fleet, the officer growled, his voice strained but resolute. Our last defensive lines have collapsed. We are transmitting our final coordinates. If you have anything that can stop this, now's the time. The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving only static. Silence hung over the lab. The reality hit like a hammer. There was no more time. Threx straightened, their feathers settling into a calm, authoritative formation. Dr. Keller, proceed. Within hours, the lab was transformed into a whirlwind of biochemical synthesis and raw experimentation. Automated assembly lines churned out test batches of synthetic compounds based on human biochemical profiles. Meanwhile, the research team synthesized Earth-inspired immune catalysts from what should have been lethal toxins, but weren't, thanks to humanity's bizarre evolutionary history. The first major breakthrough came when one of the junior technicians accidentally contaminated a sample with residue from my emergency stash of gas station beef jerky. Instead of ruining the experiment, the corrupted sample increased the immune response by 300%. Via was practically glowing with excitement. This is unprecedented, they exclaimed, holding the data tablet like a sacred relic. The preservatives, the stabilizers, they amplified the immune adaptation process through induced biochemical stress. I couldn't help but laugh. You're saying preservatives meant to keep food edible for decades might actually save the galaxy? Precisely. Via's scales shimmered in what I now recognized as scientific rapture. Introduce enough chemical instability, and the virus can't adapt fast enough. Its structural integrity collapses. We ran a second test using synthetic versions of energy drinks, a mix of stimulants, sugar, and mystery chemicals whose full composition even Earth scientists couldn't explain. The test results were explosive, literally. The treatment's cellular replication rate exceeded expectations so dramatically that we had to install reinforced containment fields around the lab. Ambassador Threx approached as I monitored the next batch of trials. This method, how reliable is it? It works, I said simply, watching as the latest test subjects, alien volunteers in advanced quarantine chambers, showed the first signs of viral reversal. And those side effects? Threx asked carefully. I sighed. They'll likely experience cravings for caffeine, sugar, processed food. Think of it as a permanent coffee addiction. Threx's feathers ruffled in something that might have been resignation. Given the alternative, I suspect the Council will accept such side effects. Via interjected, eyes gleaming with possibility. We must prepare for mass production. If we can distribute this treatment across infected worlds. The station-wide alert blared again. A tactical officer's voice crackled through the intercom. Warning. Hostile forces approaching Station Prime. Viral host forms detected on long-range sensors. Invasion imminent. I exchanged a grim look with Threx. We're out of time, I said. The virus is coming here. Threx straightened, feathers as sharp as blades. Then we meet it head on. Via was already transmitting the finalized treatment data to the station's medical production facilities. Mass production commencing, they reported. If we survive the next hour, we might save them all. The station trembled as distant explosions echoed through the halls. Battle sirens wailed, and the glow of energy shields flickered as the station's defenses engaged. I clenched my fists. The only way out was forward. Let's finish this. The station shuddered under the relentless barrage of orbital strikes, each impact sending violent tremors through its reinforced structure. Emergency klaxons blared, bathing the research complex in a harsh red glow. Status screens flickered with damage reports as automated defense turrets returned fire. But the virus-driven host forms were overwhelming in their sheer numbers and ferocity. I stood at the central command console, gripping its edge to steady myself as another blast rocked the station. Ambassador Threx and Dr. Via flanked me, their faces grim but resolute. Behind us, alien technicians scrambled to secure the final data packets for mass production of the synthesized cure, the only chance we had left. Status report. Threx barked, their feathers bristling like razor-sharp quills. A weary tactical officer's voice crackled over the comms. Multiple hostile boarding parties detected. Security teams are engaging, but we're being overrun. Containment breach in sectors 3 through 7. Vera's many limbs blurred across a data interface, activating last-ditch lockdown protocols. Production units are at 82% efficiency. We need 10 more minutes to synthesize the first full batch for deployment. We don't have 10 minutes, Threx hissed, pacing. They'll tear through this station before then. The emergency broadcast flickered on, displaying a grainy feed from the outer docking ring. Viral host forms surged through shattered blast doors, twisted abominations of metal and flesh fused into grotesque war machines. They moved with a single malevolent purpose: to consume and adapt. I forced down a wave of dread and clenched my fists. We need a way to buy time. As if on cue, the intercom crackled again. General Tarak's harsh, guttural voice boomed through the station's communication grid. This is Tarak of the Crixan Defense Fleet. My war bands are aboard and holding the outer corridors. His voice wavered, worn but victorious. But we can't hold forever. Threx keyed the comms. General, the production line needs 10 minutes to complete the cure synthesis. If the station falls before then. Understood, Tarak replied sharply, resolute. We'll hold the line. The transmission cut out before Threx could respond. For a moment, there was only the distant, thunderous sound of combat reverberating through the station. We must assume tactical command is less than 8 minutes, Vera said, their voice tight with urgency. If the cure production facility falls. It won't, I interrupted, surprising even myself with the steel in my voice. We finished what we started. Threx stared at me, their feathers settling into a calmer, more focused poise. Then let's ensure it. The next few minutes passed in a haze of frantic preparation. Threx deployed what few security teams remained to reinforce the laboratory's outer perimeter, while Vera coordinated the final assembly stages of the synthesized cure. Each production pod was an industrial marvel, churning out containers filled with a volatile chemical cocktail that only humanity's bizarre biology could have inspired. Final batch synthesis at 94% completion, Vera reported breathlessly, eyes gleaming with desperate hope. We're nearly there. Before anyone could exhale in relief, the blast doors at the far end of the laboratory shuddered violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across the reinforced alloy as something massive pounded against the other side. They've breached the inner ring, Threx whispered, drawing their gleaming energy blade with fluid precision. Prepare for combat. The next impact tore the doors from their tracks, sending them crashing to the floor in a cloud of smoke and sparking debris. Out of the swirling haze emerged a nightmare forged from viral adaptation, a towering monstrosity of fused host forms, seething with corrupted biometal and glowing veins of viral energy. It roared, a sound like tearing metal and cracking bones, and charged. Chaos erupted. Station guards unleashed a storm of plasma fire, their weapons carving molten arcs through the darkened lab. The monstrous host form shrugged off the first wave of firepower like an angry god, crushing defenders with ruthless efficiency. Threx darted forward, blade flashing in lethal arcs. They struck with precise, dancer-like grace, severing one of the creature's biomechanical limbs in a spray of sizzling fluid. But even as the limb fell, new viral tendrils coiled into place, regenerating faster than seemed possible. I grabbed a nearby diagnostic tablet and activated the station's internal security overrides. Vera, reroute auxiliary power to the containment grid. We need maximum field output, now. Vera's limbs flew across the control interface as energy relays powered up. A shimmering containment field snapped into place, forcing the monstrous host form back with a burst of searing blue light. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, the thing faltered, just long enough for Threx to fall back to my side. The containment field won't hold, Threx warned, breathless. It's too adaptive. I realized they were right. We weren't fighting a single enemy. We were battling a viral intelligence that learned every time we hit it. Suddenly, inspiration struck like lightning. Vera, load the prototype batch into the main containment disperser unit. Flood the lab with the synthesized cure. Their eyes widened in shock. The compound hasn't been stabilized. It could. It doesn't matter. I snapped. If we don't use it now, we're dead. For half a heartbeat, Vera hesitated. Then they slapped the override controls. A cascade of warning alerts blared, but the dispersal process initiated. High-pressure conduits hissed as the unstable compound surged through the containment system. With a deafening thrum, a shimmering cloud of vaporized cure engulfed the lab in a swirling electric haze. The viral monstrosity let out a furious metallic scream as the chemical fog tore through its adaptive structure. Its limbs twisted, shattered, and reformed in an increasingly erratic frenzy as the cure destabilized its cellular matrix. It staggered, convulsed, then exploded in a blinding cascade of light and shattered biometal. The silence that followed was deafening. Coughing through the dissipating chemical fog, I stumbled to my feet, lungs burning from the harsh compound-laden air. Vera emerged from behind a fallen console, scales dimmed but alive. We did it, they rasped. Threx rose slowly, their blades still gleaming but lowered in cautious relief. We survived. The command console buzzed with an incoming transmission. General Turok's voice thundered through the comms once more. Hostile forces retreating. We held the line. His voice wavered, warm but victorious. Did you finish the cure? I managed a shaky breath. Yeah, General, it's done. Days later, the first full cure shipments left the station, deployed across dozens of infected worlds. Entire populations that had been moments from extinction began to recover. Against all odds, we'd won. As I watched the final transport ships vanish into the shimmering void of faster-than-light space, Ambassador Threx approached quietly. Dr. Keller, their voice was steady calm. You've saved more lives than any diplomat, soldier, or scientist in galactic history. I managed a weary smile, all because of preservatives and bad coffee. Threx's feathers twitched in what I now recognized as reluctant amusement, a curious legacy. I nodded slowly, watching the distant stars. Let's hope it's enough.